Hi, this is Dark Journalist. Today I'm excited to welcome back to the show Chemtrails author ELANA FREELAND. Now, ELANA caused a major stir with her classic book, Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth, about hidden technologies being deployed in our skies. In that book, she referenced a major program under development by the military called the Space Fence. Today, she'll discuss the ramifications of this covert program becoming operational. Is there a global control grid being activated from space? Let's go ask ELANA FREELAND.
This, if it is pulled off, will transform organisms. There's no question.
The Dark Journalist Special Report. The Space Fence Menace, Suborbital Servitude. Featuring an in-depth two-part interview with Chemtrails HAARP expert ELANA FREELAND. Now, let's go join Dark Journalist Daniel List.
ELANA, it's great to have you back with us. I know you've been doing some amazing research on this one, and I think the space fence is an absolutely crucial topic. So I'm very glad that you're here with us today to go over this in detail. Now, before the interview's over, I predict everyone is going to understand exactly how important this is. But let's start with the book. Now, the book comes out in early 2018. And what is the working title for it at this point?
The publisher decided, Under an Ionized Sky, from Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown. That's the title.
Now, for the uninitiated here, what is an ionized sky? And what is the threat that it poses, us living under an ionized sky?
Yeah, we live under an ionized sky now. And the only way we can tell that, if we knew what we were looking at, if we knew the context of what we were looking at, would be, to my mind, twofold. One, the amazing number of jet trails, chemical jet trails that we're seeing in the sky, commercial, military, it doesn't matter, because they all use the same fuel. That's the interesting thing, is the military controls the classified aspects of the fuel that even commercial jets are using now. So that we see that, we see how it expands out into a cirrus cloud cover. And it takes away the blue skies of Florida that Florida's famous for, and Arizona, and etc. The second thing we see, which we don't contextualize because we don't know about this program, is the ill health that is all around us.
Right. Well, I remember the stats from last winter about all of these flu deaths that we were having, and the numbers were really on the rise. And we're seeing a lot of immune deficiency disorders that are taking place. So I guess my question is, could some of these types of symptoms, like the rise in flu deaths, be related to this process that you're talking about somehow?
Some people call it the chemtrail flu who know somewhat of this. But people don't understand what they're breathing in. Oh, yeah, we know about pollution. We know about asbestos. We know about secondhand cigarette smoke and, fluoride in the water, etc. But we don't understand that the synergy between those elements that maybe our bodies might have been able to adjust to, given that the human body is an amazingly flexible adjuster to many things. Instead, those elements are now exacerbated by what's dropping from the sky that nobody knows, that's in nanoparticulates. And we're having a synergistic revolution in the immune system that is no longer able to make some adjustments. I mean, in a way, cancer has been an adjustment of the body. It's like, let's just, the immune system says, all right, this crap's coming in from junk food and processed foods and a processed life, wireless technology, etc. let's siphon it off over here into and isolate it and let it develop its own cell structures. And that's sort of cancer. Uh, but what's happening now is even that is being flooded over, and people are now having true breakdowns in the immune system. And if only they understood that this global program, which they're calling geoengineering, and they keep saying that they might have to do, has been going on for 20 years now. 20 years. And I mean, I could take it back further. But this program under Project Cloverleaf has been a 20-year deal. And Clifford Carnicom was one of the first people to begin isolating and collecting data in his home in northern New Mexico back in the late 90s, because he was noticing in those, I lived in Santa Fe for 5 years where I was friends with Clifford. The sky used to be pristine. I mean, I still remember the first time I went through New Mexico in 1968, 69, and the azure blue of that sky was like breathtaking. Well, that's over.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment here, because I think many people would agree with your main point that we're not dealing with the same sky anymore. Now, is that due to the laying down of these chemical trails? How do you see it?
There's a sort of never go away smog that is everywhere now. And what produces that smog it's a chemical smog, is what's coming out of the combustion chambers of jets. Now, I had a long talk with Jim Lee, whom at climateviewer.com, whom I consider to be quite an expert on fuel. He went to Washington and testified before the EPA, I don't know, last year or a year and a half ago. And he and I agreed that, yes, it's coming out of the combustion chamber of the jets because of the fuel. There's a fuel process called pyrolysis, in which you can put in aluminum, nanoparticulates of aluminum in the fuel, and in the combustion process, it will be turned into aluminum oxide. So there are a lot of oxides coming out of that. And another guy who's really good at that and has illuminated some of that to me, and I included in the Space Fence book.
Right.
His name is Harold Kautzwelle, and Harold is a German chemist and a very unusual chemist in that he doesn't apologize for his spiritual side at all. He looks at every issue, such as the fuel pyrolysis producing the chemicals in our skies. He looks at it through spiritual eyes as well as physical science eyes, and I appreciate that. So he talks about how the transmutation of these chemical elements, most of which are metals, by the way, titanium, aluminum, lithium, barium, how in the combustion chamber of the jet they can be made into oxides, and that this is what is coming out of the chamber, the engine chamber. And as it spews out, you can see it. Now, this is how we know there are no contrails anymore. Might as well not even talk about them. Maybe if you take up a little Piper airplane or something from your local airport, you're going to have just condensation, even if you go pretty high, but not in anything commercial or military. No, these are all chemicals, and we're breathing them, and they're going into our bodies, and our bodies are not evolved enough to know how to expel them. We don't expel them just in our sweat, urine, and feces. We don't. They kind of hang out in our tissues. And so we're basically producing a whole new cancer, I want to say, or I don't know what it's going to look like as it begins to take over in the body. And I'm not even talking about the biologicals that Clifford Carnicom studies that are piggybacked onto the polymers in the jet fuel. And the polymers are the basic delivery system for any biologicals that might be classified and added to the jet fuel.
Well, that is interesting, and I imagine someone who's interested in chemtrails and what they're for also wonders exactly how they are created. So beyond what we already know, about spraying and that kind of thing, is there anything new on the horizon about what the delivery systems are?
The other thing coming out that Jim and I agreed on is not a supplementary delivery system, which many people posit as being possible, like on the wings, like pylons on the wings with tubes coming out. And now we've got another canister in the jet, and that's a separate system from the fuel. Still possible. But we do know that that many jets unload fuel. They dump fuel before they land. And Jim said that he had seen evidence that some jets are actually dumping fuel at 20,000 feet. So that means a delivery system. That's not for landing. That's a delivery system. And therefore, there could be other things being added for this supplementary delivery system that we don't know about. And the only reason I think that's true, Daniel, is that I get a lot of emails and a lot of Facebook action from people all over the world. So I have noticed that certainly the photographs of clouds vary from region to region. And we all know the Earth is a magnetic being. The magnetism is different here in the Pacific Northwest from the magnetism even in Montana, where they're even closer to the north-south Rocky Mountain chain that goes from pole to pole. The mineral content is different here. So I'm thinking that among the many experiments going on with this technology that goes by the moniker of geoengineering, that they are experimenting also with combinations of chemicals, populations, and the geomagnetism of the region. And that's why I think there has to always be a supplementary system to the jet fuel combinations that are coming out the back of the jet. And who drew my attention to this in a very real way was a woman in Oregon. I won't mention her name because she's being targeted. She talked about a whistleblower who contacted her about 2 years ago now, and he worked for the weather department in Oregon, and he was feeling very conscience-stricken over a program that he had discovered was going on. There's always the need-to-know basis. There's always the compartmentalization that all scientists are subject to, and he had not known it, and he had not known how to interpret it, had he even known. But now he realized that lithium was being dumped on the coastal cities of Oregon. And people there were already talking about feeling spaced out, feeling stoned.
Fascinating.
Sleeping a lot. And so I got very interested in lithium. And I've subsequently found out from Billy Hayes that lithium is actually used for the chemtrails being made by ships 200 miles offshore or more of the West Coast, because that's where the Navy creates the weather systems that are then sent north along my coastal line up where I am to the jet stream generally parked. There's a curve parked over Vancouver Island, just north of me. So the lithium is used by the jets because it actually can sustain a lower altitude without crumbling and falling really quickly into the sea or the land and being not usable for conductivity.
Right.
because conductivity is the name of the game, whether you're moving weather systems, whether you're communicating with your satellites, or with various laser instruments along the coast. This is key to understanding why so many nanoparticulate metals are used in rocket fuel, in jet fuel. It isn't just because it's economically good, or that's the only way they can do the fuel. No, it has to do also with what the military calls C4: command, control, communications, and cyber warfare. It is key and paramount to the military mind now that cyber warfare is always a risk. And so they are willing to, in my opinion, they're willing to sacrifice the health of the less healthy citizens, and with the hope that the more healthy citizens will be able to evolve and handle what the lungs are now taking in and is traveling through our bloodstream, past the blood-brain barrier. Nanoparticles go past the blood-brain barrier, and their idea is that's just that's just the cost of being planetarily ready 24/7 for any risk factors, and for their own programs that are that they're pushing forward toward what I talk about a little bit, much more in the Space Fence book, transhumanism.
Wow. Well, before jumping into hyperspace on that, and let me say I really appreciate the very thorough and complete overview that you just laid out here. It's so easy for some people to throw around terms like ionization and chemtrails and that kind of thing. But what is it really?
Yes.
And I think that you've demonstrated that and really done a great job here of giving us all a lot of homework around it.
Yes.
We get a much better picture because your research on this is so precise, and you include so many different elements like lithium, the things you were talking about. It comes down to questions like, why do they want an ionized sky, for example? So now we can get started on getting a much better picture about that, and that's great. Now, one thing that I've noticed in the comments on our first round of interviews, and people were just so excited about your analysis on this and felt like they could finally get some of the real facts. But one of the themes in their questions and testimonials that I saw over and over again was that in their reports, they were almost exclusively from the West Coast. California, Oregon, Washington State, parts of Canada, major West Coast focus for chemtrails. What is that all about? Why the West Coast, and why is that such a target zone?
Well, I don't think it is just the target zone, because I am in touch with people in Maryland, Pennsylvania, upstate New York, Washington, D.C., all along the Atlantic coast, down to Florida. Everybody's getting hit. Everybody's getting hit.
Well, what if we put it this way? Why is the awareness so much higher on the West Coast? And I definitely think that's the case.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is. But isn't that, it's been that way since the 60s. Remember California dreaming, everybody heading to California.
Right.
There is, interestingly, I'm a student of Rudolf Steiner's ideas. Interestingly, Rudolf Steiner makes a very clear point that consciousness, this is going to sound really strange, consciousness goes in a Western direction.
Ah.
And I was, of course, very struck by that, because it was very important when I was living in Michigan, having attended the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, and when Martin Luther King was murdered, I really just had to leave and go, as Simon and Garfunkel put it, look for America.
Oh, yeah.
So I headed west, because I knew that the consciousness in the West was doing something, and I didn't know anything about Rudolf Steiner or anybody else then. It was simply an impulse, an instinct. And so that's why I think it's out on the West. Yes, we got the fruits and nuts out here for sure. But I'm proud to be one of those people exploring different consciousness, though the Eastern establishment, I think, still runs things in America on a political level. And then you have the Midwest, which now let's go back to the jet stream, because it is, I'm in touch with Billy Hayes, who lives in Kansas. So that's a big help to me. And Billy's always complaining to me, "What are you doing? You're mixing up weather for us again. I know it's going to be bad when it gets here." Because where I am is the cauldron. And this is where they mix the weather that the Navy has swept up until recently. And that was very interesting. The intense precipitation dumping in California, which has been in a drought condition now for 5 years. So that seems to have been ended with what? With floods. Go figure.
Right.
So anyway, they bring the weather in. The Navy helps along, and this is through the chemicals in the trails, very conductive, and lasers. They're shooting lasers, making wave guides right along the coast, going north, because now they're going to bring that precipitate straight up the coast. And then it's going to get up to Vancouver Island, and then it's going to go descend and head southeast and east for various weather experiments. I call them experiments. Now, how many weather experiments do you need? I think we're still doing experiments, and some things they've got the tiger by the tail on controlling weather systems in some ways, in various, again, magnetic geographic areas, which are different from other magnetic geographic areas. So there's a constant tweaking going on, constant tweaking of how to do this. And the most recent one that I know has to be an experiment is that now I was sent something by another fabulous researcher, Susan Ferguson, that up in the Arctic Circle, it's temperate. It's temperate right now. Should be freezing up there. Should be way below zero. Not true. But what do we have? South Europe, Southern Europe, Italy, freezing. So what they're doing is, these are men who would be as gods, and they are controlling the weather, and they're practicing, and they're tweaking, and they're getting it straight. But from here, where I am, it's heading to the Midwest, and they really usually hit the Midwest with extremity. One day it'll be 80 degrees in Kansas, and the next day it'll be sub-zero.
Wow.
Now that is not global warming, some mystical thing invented, climate change. Those are all so mystical, and they call us the tinfoil hat people. To me, if you study the engineering of how this is done and you understand the components, it's a no-brainer.
Yes.
It's happening. And again, unlike consciousness, Daniel, you notice the weather moves from west to east.
Oh.
The weather moves from west to east. Consciousness moves from east to west. Okay, just to make that clear.
Well, I like that. I like that reversal there. Well, you make a great point here, which is that this manipulation of the atmosphere is global. So, as I was suggesting, we were getting all of these comments from the West Coast, but it's a worldwide phenomena, so it's not just happening in any one particular place.
No.
But the question is, what are the differences here? Let's take a place like Hungary, for example, in the heart of Europe, and on the other side, California. Now, are these two totally different programs that are taking place?
Well, Hungary is an interesting one. Okay, because I'm thinking, I always think back to Croatia. When Croatia joined NATO, this is really important, I think. Croatia, I don't know how long it had been on the list to join NATO, but at last it joined. And I put this in the Chemtrails Heart book. And the following day, the ink was hardly dry. The skies were chemtrailed. So it is a requirement. This is how I see it. It's a requirement to be in NATO that you will be chemmed. Along with it, though, and this is not answering your question exactly, but I want to bring it in while it's on my mind. Along with it are GMOs.
Right.
And NATO countries are expected to use imported GMOs. They're expected to use GMO food, seed. A lot of nations, 26 nations last time I counted now, are refusing all GMOs. So that one's falling through. It's kind of like they were going to fluoride all the water in every city, and that's kind of fallen through.
Yes.
And they were going to put smart meters in every city, and that's kind of falling through. They have all these plans to lock us in, right? Lock us in. But sometimes the citizen reaction and perhaps a few whistleblowers help is so extreme that they have to move on to plan B. And then plan B becomes plan A. Okay, so Croatia and Hungary, the pictures I get from Hungary are almost never any clear sky whatsoever. Now, they're terrifically landlocked.
Right.
I would assume that we would have to have a magnetic study, a geomagnetic study of all these countries. And if there's any geomagnetic expert out there, I would love it that someone would initiate that, because I really feel that is a huge connection, not just for the choice of chemicals to distribute there, but the reaction of the land to the clouds, because we're really, we tend to think of, oh, that's up there and we're down here and this is separate. No, it's all one in this little tiny atmospheric bubble we live in.
Right, and that it truly is a global interest. Of course, when Fukushima happened in Japan, the radioactive particles spread and traveled right through to North America. So it's one big connected chain. One thing I want to touch on here, and I know we've done complete episodes on this with you before on the subject, but when we did the experiments with HAARP, and that's the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, how does that tie into what we're talking about here? You know, and what is the current status of HAARP up there in Alaska?
As you know, it closed down in 2013 and was recently reopened, but reopened under completely different parameters, I might add. It's not the same, because those experiments that were run for about a decade were very, very successful. And by success, what I mean is the military had had its eyes on the ionosphere for decades. They had done many experiments blasting the ionosphere, blasting the Van Allen belts, trying to get the power that's up in the ionosphere down into the lower atmosphere for their own use. And this is the key to the whole Project Cloverleaf and the direction it's gone, is now, as above, so below is a very ancient alchemical formula that is now true. We basically have in our ionized atmosphere, it's a kind of lesser ionosphere here. And to maintain that, they've got to be dropping all these particles. And that includes the rocket launches from both coasts and down in Texas at Houston. They've got to keep spewing these nanoparticulates of metal in order to, and this is getting to the space fence now, in order to match what the jets are putting out, what the Navy ships are putting out, what the rocket launches are putting out. All of these are carefully analyzed, carefully calibrated, carefully chosen to all be one huge wireless mesh that we are to live in. And now communications, not just between military parties or Microsoft's cloud or our precious cell phones, which, by the way, I don't own one. All of this is to be one mesh so that they can even control our nervous system and all the way down to our DNA. This is what is in their minds.
It is extraordinary, and that's where we really start getting into the space fence. Because one thing that you've pointed out clearly is that one of its major functions is this surveillance right down to the DNA level.
Yes, and the space fence is I spend a whole book on it, about 400 pages, and explain how it is in near Earth orbit, NEO, or low Earth orbit, LEO, all the way down to, yes, the Terra waves, the Terra waves that you experience if you fly and go through the TSA awful X-ray machines. The Terra waves are going to be involved with the 5G phones, which, I highly recommend to people not to get and not to be around, because the Terra wave shreds the DNA.
Huh.
And this above the Earth, so we've got the rockets going up. They're leaving a flotsam and jetsam wake, and that is being pulled up. It also is very like the chemicals in our atmosphere, so some of it remains. Sometimes lithium is used in it extremely because they want low communication capability, low conductivity. Otherwise, it's all aluminum. Because aluminum's light, it has 4 times the amount of surface area. It's a great conductor. It's cheap. And so this is taken up, and it isn't just to leave it in our atmosphere and feed the chemtrail conductivity. It's to be taken up to low Earth orbit so that it eventually becomes a ring around the planet because of centrifugal force. It's pulled into orbit, and this will eventually, no matter how they do the thrust and the angle of the thrust, it will eventually come down toward the equator, and it'll be a ring around the equator, almost identical to the Saturn rings. And this is really interesting because not only will it provide a sort of lockdown on planet Earth communications, and that would include how our DNA communicates too. Because remember, if you're talking about controlling the communication at a sort of planetary mechanical level, and you're talking about an electrical planet, that as above goes to this so below.
Right.
Right down into my cellular structure and DNA. This, if it is pulled off, will transform organisms. There's no question.
Fascinating. And when we come back, we'll go deep into the space fence and how it's being deployed as we speak, forming something like Saturn's rings right around the Earth. It's all happening now. Final round of part 1 coming up here with ELANA Freeland. I'm Dark Journalist. Stay with us.
Dark Journalist. Go for truth in 2017. The deepest questions, the biggest secrets, the darkest mysteries. Dark Journalist. Go for truth. With top guests like Graham Hancock.
Graham, how do we as a society escape the grip of the deep state in the 21st century?
Rather than spending trillions of dollars every year on building up our armies and our weapons of mass destruction and creating a climate of hatred and fear and suspicion, we should be uniting as a human race.
Catherine Austin Fitts.
Catherine, what is the issue that's holding us back and destroying prosperity?
We have a system which is got a negative return on investment. It's killing human productivity, and where it's going is inhuman.
Linda Moulton Howe.
Linda, you've been fighting against secrecy your whole life. How are we doing in this battle?
There is a kind of energy and synergy that you and I have because we are both trying so hard in so many facets to get to the bottom of what is the truth.
Dark Journalist. Go for truth. Visit darkjournalist.com and subscribe now for a special summer discount available for just $39 for 1 full year. You'll receive exclusive member benefits, including access to the complete high-quality audio archives to stream or download at your convenience, and subscriber-only content, including bonus show material. Sign up for our free newsletter to stay updated on the latest shows. Dark Journalist. This is the year. Now is the time.
You know, we need dark journalists, so just keep doing what you're doing.
Join us now and go for truth.
And we are back. This is Dark Journalist, and I'm speaking with ELANA FREELAND, the author of Chemtrails HAARP and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth, the classic HAARP chemtrails book that brought together all of the different studies and knowledge around this mysterious subject. Her new book, with all of her cutting-edge research on the space fence, is called Under an Ionized Sky, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown. It's due for release in February 2018. And there's a lot of anticipation around it. This one looks like a game changer. Keep your eyes on that release date, as this is going to be great stuff. Now, ELANA, you were discussing some of the preparations underway for full deployment of the space fence, and how this might include something like Saturn's rings surrounding the Earth. Now, what is their objective there?
You see this ring and around Saturn. Now we will be able to communicate better with our vectored craft, not particularly our rockets. I believe we have vectored craft, and I was very taken with a book on it. I'd have to get the name, I forget it right now. But we've had it since we brought the Nazis over under Operation Paperclip. We have so-called saucers, we have so-called UFOs, we have triangular ships that can travel interspatially. Yes, I believe this. I don't know that I could prove it in a court of law, but I believe that the space fence, the one around the equator, the part of it around the equator, will certainly be used to communicate at least in our galaxy, and at least in our solar system. And that's very high on their list.
Well, that's interesting, because it sounds like they're building a support system for this advanced technology the public has no idea even exists. So therefore, the true function of the space fence has to be secret and under the guise of a different program.
It is. And then if you do a search on the space fence, you'll see that they say, well, yeah, it's great. We were building this one, a new element in the Marshall Islands, and we're going to be able to count all the space debris up in space. And now they have these little cube satellites and sensors that they're catapulting up there. So there's a lot of debris, definitely a lot of debris up there going around the planet. So yeah, we're going to map it so that we know where they are, and of course our GPS satellites will be safer and that sort of thing. So I'm sure that's one of the agendas of the space fence apparatus, which is planetary, not just a little installation here and there, and not just the ring around the planet. But I know that the real purpose goes back to the SDI days of Reagan, Cheney, and Rumsfeld. And George H.W. Bush back to 80.
Right.
I call them the Reagan Troika. That the SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative, the Star Wars program, had big plans, and here we are.
It's really amazing. But with the push for the SDI Star Wars, a so-called space-based missile defense system in the 1980s, and of course valid research suggests that program may very well have been aimed out into the solar system as much as it was aimed right back at Earth. My question is, why didn't they just deploy the space fence back in the 1980s under President Reagan?
What they lacked was the ionized atmosphere. And that's why it had to be thrown on hold. And Bernard Eastland's patents came along, and they were able to build HAARP, do the experiments, get the ionospheric juice coming down this way, And now it's all systems go.
Yeah, well, that's pretty unfortunate timing for this generation, for sure. And one thing I'll point out again here is that for the average person, they know next to nothing, really, about this project, which is truly astonishing. Now, going back to SDI Star Wars and that whole program for a moment, this was such an unusual project. Even its ostensible purpose, which was to be able to zap incoming missiles from space, required an enormous scientific effort for a program that was supposedly never realized.
Exactly.
So to expect that, when the Berlin Wall came down and the Soviet Union fell apart, that we just abandoned all of the SDI research and gave up on it, after all of that time and development, it just isn't logical. So the official story is, remember that wild era back in the day when we actually almost put missiles in space and had space weapons?
Right, and they had the space fence back then too, the concept, and they called it a shield. It was going to be a
Yes.
shield. We're going to shield ourselves from missiles, and that, of course, goes into what I consider a discussion of plasma and what plasma is, because we can say our atmosphere is ionized. At the same time, we can say it's plasmaized, and plasma is the fourth state of matter. It's matter, but it's not matter like your body and mine, not a biological matter. It's an ether matter. An ether is I told you I have a chapter on that because I needed to defend ether. It was thrown out at the end of the 19th century. And even Einstein was using it as late as the 20s, and he was told, don't use that term anymore. And now they use the term dark matter, and that, of course, is ether. But the plasma comes in with the idea of the shield, the space fence shield, because that's really what Tesla talked about as a Tesla globe. It's actually a protective plasma bubble that would protect us from, even if there are extraterrestrial enemies at some point, this would protect us from that, or at least by that plasma shield, we would be able to detect them. And that's what I think is the the cirrus cloud cover. It has holes in it, of course, but now it's pretty much that it's all encompassing now. We're in an envelope. And when people say to me, well, I haven't seen any chemtrails in photographs over China or Russia. Well, I have.
Yeah.
And I would assume they're, if for nothing else, pursuing the same avenue of technology, given that the US and NATO have done so much on it. So we're in a plasma envelope in a way. And now we're in the seventh operation. In my Chemtrails Heart book, I tell how Clifford Carnicom came up with these basically 6 operations that are military in nature that are served by this chemical trails, radio frequency, microwaving, laser beam technology. And the 7th is the detection and obscuration, my edition, of exotic propulsion technology. And what this means is that with this plasma shield around us, it's not the sun we're worried about. We're in a solar minimum now. It's not the sun that we're really worried about, or solar this is and that's. It's really about detecting other plasma events going on from other nations, other perhaps dimensions, plasma entities, and it's also obscuration of various exotic propulsion, perhaps our own, such as triangular ships like the Aurora, the XB 41 or XB 71. So this plasma shield that Reagan promised us so long ago, we have it. It's just not. It's not as neat and tidy as a nice dome.
Mhm.
That is what I think we need to expand our horizons as a population, and not have the tidy black line between science fiction and science, because the science is now, I would guess, 50 to 100 years ahead of what the population is being told. I mean, they're still talking about missiles in mainstream press. Missiles is not the deal now. We're in directed energy weapons now, and I thought 9/11 was very clear on that.
Mhm.
Besides detonations from inside the buildings, which were supplementary, you had you had a true show, a spectacle of a use of a directed energy weapon. So,
Was it space-based?
say it again.
Was it a space-based weapon?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Yes. And you could see, I think it was the XB-71 that actually blew the latest Elon Musk rocket off of its pad.
Yeah.
I've seen, a slowed down version of a YouTube on it, and there definitely was a whew, and I've seen that before. So, the nice thing about the XB-71 is that it can also travel in space, and really be aloft for a long time, particularly if it has some, can have a ship give it a fill up there. So a lot's going on, and really we need to expand our imaginations and not expect that you know that we need to act like we're in graduate school, being conditioned by the mainstream education or mainstream media. Um, I can see pretty far now, but can I, leave a trail of breadcrumbs for people to follow, that where they'll be able to see how I got there, and that they too can do this if they want to pay this much attention to these matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the space aspect, I think often of Norm Berggren's Rings of Saturn book, this retired scientist, and he was in there discussing how in the 1980s NASA probes caught this recon footage of these large ships that were just hovering around the rings of Saturn. And soon after that, when it was reported, and Catherine Austin Fitts notes this, that all the Iran-Contra fraud just went spiraling off the charts suddenly, as if we needed a lot of money fast. So part of the motivation for the space fence, in addition to locking down the planet, was also a defense system against incoming threats from off-world civilizations. Now, since the government doesn't mention UFOs or live up to any of the research around that, then they also, use this idea that, well, since they're dealing with that, it's a defense provision, and they don't tell the public about UFOs, so they're not going to tell them about the real purpose of the space fence.
Well, I'm sure that is one of the lines they use in NASA and other scientific so-called scientific organizations, like the Jason Scholars. I would think that, but the thing is, I'm really convinced, Daniel, that that there are entities. I think I must have told you in a previous time that I have seen one, and had an encounter with it. But they're in plasma bodies, would be how I'd put it, and that's why I think plasma physics is so fascinating and fast growing right now. Not only are they producing plasma in the atmosphere with chemicals and a sort of combustion process uh, from lasers, and they're even creating. Now and then you'll see a YouTube of someone who sees a big giant cloud just sort of sitting right on the earth, and it is a cloud, but it's not a cloud. And they stick their hand in it, and their hand goes in, and nothing happens, and they pull it out. But the cloud does not dissipate or anything. It's not like the clouds that we've seen and grown accustomed to in our atmosphere. This is a created cloud. This is a plasma cloud. They can be created in laboratories. But the idea, like from 1947 on, when here in the Northwest, those 7 saucers were seen off the coast, I would assume if it's metal, it's ours. And if it is not metal, but is something a little more diaphanous, a little more insubstantial, that it could be something we've created to holographically make something happen in the sky, because holography is gonna go crazy now. They can make, like recently the thing came out a couple days ago of China having yet another city in the clouds.
Right.
Yet another fantastic city. Yeah, there it was.
So you're saying that now there are these breakthroughs into other realities, other dimensions, other worlds. Why is that happening now?
Because this world is only this world. There are many worlds. And I think that's one thing that is happening through particularly CERN and other machines like they have there. And they now have a new one called Awake.
Wow, and this is exactly what we'll get into in part 2. The new book by ELANA FREELAND is Under an Ionized Sky, Chemtrails and Space Fence Lockdown. You can pre-order this book on Amazon, and I know it's really going to shake things up. We have to wait till February 2018, but it's going to be worth it. ELANA, excellent information today. Thank you so much. Stay right there, and we'll cruise into part 2.
Okay, Daniel.
And we'll deal with the UFO question in all of this and how the space fence is designed to deal with this. So part 2 is going to be even more mind-blowing than part 1.
Okay, Daniel. Blessings.
Thanks again for being here.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for joining me for this fascinating episode with ELANA FREELAND on the space fence menace and suborbital servitude. You can find more deep interviews, special reports, and documentaries at www.darkjournalist.com. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel to receive the latest videos. See you soon.